Dr. Shusai, can you please start now?
Hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to the 27th webinar organized by the English Language Teachers Association of India, ELTI, on questioning skills for the classroom. May I request everyone to watch a short video and have a glimpse of ELTI's work. Can we have the video, please? Thank you, Dr. Shravan, for the video. And now I'm pleased to welcome our today's speaker, Mr. Nagaraju, ELTI's organizing committee, the chapter heads and members of Thoothukudi and Thiruvallur chapters for organizing today's webinar and all the attendees. I'm sure you will have a lot of takeaways from today's webinar on questioning skill for the classroom. It is also a great pleasure for me to introduce the speaker now. Mr. Nagaraju taught English language and literature to graduate and postgraduate students at various colleges. He has also served as the principal of a postgraduate college for 5 years. He was a conscientious and popular teacher for 36 years. He made innovative efforts to make learning an interesting and enjoyable experience for his students. He is a
Dr. Shravan?
Yes.
I think Susai has a problem in joining.
Shusai sir is...
No.
He is not here because he has to start.
Ma'am, we are live. Rashli ma'am, we are live. Shaisha, please continue.
Yes, sir. He is a master trainer in communicative language.
Sir, please continue.
Yes, ma'am. I am in. Yeah, thank you. He is a master trainer in communicative language teaching techniques, certified by the US State Department English Language Fellow Program. He has conducted workshops at several levels in various institutes, Cambridge University Press, and universities.
Sorry, all of you. Our moderator is not here. He has some connectivity issue, I think. Let me welcome all the participants of this workshop on behalf of Thiruvarur and Thoothukudi chapter. And I request all the participants to be here for the entire session to receive your certificates. I am humbled and honored to introduce the speaker, Mr. Nagaraju, who taught English language and literature to graduate and postgraduate students at various colleges. He has also served as principal of a postgraduate college for 5 years. He was a conscientious and popular teacher for over 36 years. He made innovative efforts to make learning an interesting and enjoyable experience for his students. He is a master trainer in communicative language teaching techniques, certified by the US State Department English Language Fellow Program. He has conducted workshops at several levels in various institutes, Cambridge University Press, and universities. He has organized more than 150 training workshops for English lecturers working in engineering colleges, degree colleges, and polytechnics. He co-authored and edited 4 books for university and polytechnic students and designed other learning materials. Mr. Raju, a popular resource person in communication skills, soft skills, and employability skills, has been invited to speak on several current academic and general subjects. Mr. Raju is a life member of Lions Clubs International. He graduated from the renowned Faculty Development Excellence Series of Lions Clubs International and has organized innumerable training workshops for district and club officers. He won almost every award that a lion can dream of. Mr. Raju has traveled in several countries. Now, over to the speaker. Sir?
Yeah,
You
thank you so
take
much.
over the session now.
Thank you. 1 second, just give me a moment.
Please continue. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to come to you and then address you on this great evening. And I consider it a great privilege and also a wonderful opportunity to be invited by LTI and also to share some of my thoughts with you on this happy evening. The topic is questioning skills for the classroom. And in this 40 minutes that we have, let's maybe spend a little time on knowing what questioning skills are and then how do we go about equipping ourselves with them and then how we can make ourselves better teachers. That's the focus. So maybe before we begin, I request you to please go to the chat box and then quickly type something that you expect to learn from this session. So the next 30-40 minutes that we are going to spend together, maybe you have some expectations from this. If I know what exactly you are expecting, that will help my job a little easier, I believe. So do you mind going to the chat box and will somebody read out some inputs from there? I cannot see the chat box there. Maybe somebody will help me, I think.
Sir, we will help you, sir. Don't worry.
Please.
Get them right.
Right.
Wisdom, unlearn,
Oh, good. That's good.
questioning skills, art
Yes.
of skill,
Right.
how to integrate skills within teaching,
Mm-hmm.
how to question,
Right.
how to make students questions and art of questioning,
Perfect.
method of asking questions,
Oh, yes.
how to improve my students' questions skill,
That's really perfect.
impact of questions in our life.
Mm-hmm. Beyond the classroom.
And there are many questions.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Questions is strategy.
Which will give me an idea of what exactly you are expecting. Some of you are thinking beyond the classroom and are connecting it to your life, it seems. And some of you are guessing perhaps that you are going to learn how to equip your students with the questioning skills. But my focus mainly would be how to equip ourselves as teachers, how to ask better questions, and what makes us better questioners in the class, etc. So these are a few points that I have thought of considering. Why do we ask questions in the class? What are good questioning skills? Some of you said this already. And how effective are our questioning skills? Is there a tool? Is there a device that can help us know how good are we at it? Is there a measuring yardstick that we can use to know whether we are good at making questions? What are various types of questions that we can ask in a classroom, and how to acquire those skills? These are some points I perhaps would like to focus on, but maybe taking a cue from what you have just said, we will make some minor changes to this. Okay, Einstein said, if I have a lot of time to solve a problem, I'll spend a major portion of that time on designing some appropriate questions. Once I have the right questions, it becomes very easy for me to solve that problem. Maybe I'll spend less than 10% of the available time to me, and that's enough. 90% or even more time that's available to me, I can spend on designing the questions. Once I know the right questions, getting the answer is not difficult at all. This is what Einstein said. I'm sure we can learn something from here, and then asking the right questions perhaps in our classes also is that very important. If we know the right questions, if we go to the class prepared with the right set of questions, whatever outcomes we expect from the students are not very difficult to get. Okay, there is another person here, a Nobel laureate, Isaac Rabin. And his mother, like all mothers, used to inquire about the school, about the class, about other things. But one difference that you can find in Isaac Rabin's mother and other mothers is every day his mother used to ask after the school was over, did you ask a good question today? Did you ask any questions in the class today? Right? Did you get an opportunity to ask a question, and what questions did you ask? This was what his mothers asked. And I think that made all the difference. That's what he acknowledged later. So he said, because my mother encouraged me to ask questions in the class, I have become what I have become. This is what the Nobel laureate said. And finally, Voltaire, judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. So a man's worth, a man's value, a man's knowledge, a man's personality can be evaluated by just taking a quick look at the kind of questions that one asks. What questions have they asked? So I think questions are so very important, and questions make such a huge impact on the people that we interact with. Okay, let me begin by telling you this interesting story. There were two monks, and both of them had this habit of smoking. But they wanted to get rid of it because they were such addicts to smoking that even during their prayer time also they used to smoke, and they wanted to get rid of this habit, or maybe they wanted to seek permission. What could they do about that? Both of them wrote a letter each to their master, and within a few weeks they received a response. But when they compared, the responses were completely different from each other. One was given permission to smoke, to continue smoking. One was not given permission. If you take a look at the letters, you understand that there was some difference in the questions they asked. The first one asked, Master, may I smoke when I pray? When I am praying, is it okay if I smoke? And naturally, the answer was an affirmative. No. An absolute no, the answer. And the second one wrote the question slightly differently. Master, is it okay to pray even while I am smoking? And the master naturally said, there is no time that's bad for prayers. Any time you can say the prayers. Prayers are for all times. And that's why even when you are smoking, also perhaps you can pray. Maybe this story may not be absolutely relevant to what we are going to discuss today, but I think this will set a tone for what I am going to tell you, because questions make a lot of impact. Questions help us get what we want from our students. Questions, I think, make a whole bearing on our presence in the class as a teacher. Okay, please go back to the chat box again and maybe give you a few answers on why should teachers ask questions in the class? Why do teachers ask questions? I mean, as a teacher, why do you ask questions in the class? Any answers on that? Please type in the chat box. What purpose asking questions does serve?
Check their understanding, to develop their skills, to create curiosity, to get instant feedback,
Right.
to keep the lesson engaging,
Okay.
to ensure learning, to elicit.
Good.
Even I'm unable to read because it's just
Quite a lot of them, I think.
crawling.
Yeah, I know it scrolls very fast.
Yeah.
I know, because there are lots of
So,
people there. And
to
then,
know their understanding, to clarify their doubts,
okay.
to trigger the interest.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Anyway, I think the answers are on expected lines, and maybe perhaps I would show you my slide, and then perhaps it almost is the same thing that you have just said. So these are all the possible advantages of asking questions in the class. So starting from just arousing interest, you can be a lot more. I'll quickly read that to, I think the answers are the same that you have already given: to arouse interest, to motivate students, to involve the students in the class, to create clarity in case they have questions, doubts, etc., to diagnose difficulties in case some student is stuck somewhere and is not able to progress. Perhaps we can help by asking questions, to evaluate their performance. This is, I think, one of the most important purposes. Many teachers ask questions in the class to achieve success, to create agreement, to inspire confidence, and to increase their participation, to empower students. I think this is one I like very much, to empower students. I'll come to that a little later, to spark ideas and to find solutions, to expand the vision of the students, and to fuel analytical thinking, critical thinking, reflective thinking, creative thinking, and a lot more. So perhaps these are the answers that you also have given. There are perhaps one or two things none of you have thought of. Even my slide does not include here, maybe, but I'll come to that a little later towards the end of my presentation. So questions serve one additional advantage, which is not listed here. I'll maybe discuss that towards the end of my presentation. Okay, we will have a quick poll now, and I can't launch the poll from here. I think somebody will help me. Before the poll is launched, let me explain the question to you. Whenever there is a poll, there are no correct and wrong answers. A poll means your opinion. I'm gathering your opinion. So don't worry whether a certain answer is right or wrong, but whether you agree with that or not is what I want to know. What's your opinion? Poll is always an opinion poll, not a quiz. I'll come to a quiz later. I'll try a quiz also with you. So the question here is, which of these is the most important advantage of asking questions directly? I've already shown you a list. You also have given your answers in the chat box. So there have been many answers already. But the question now is, which is the most important advantage? Okay, there are 10, 20, 30 different advantages. Out of those 20, 30, which do you think, in your opinion, which is the most important? Right? Can somebody help me launch the poll, please?
It's already live.
Oh, great. maybe after about 50% of the people poll, perhaps you can close the poll and declare the results.
%18 people are saying to diagnose difficulties.
Okay.
8% are saying to increase competence. 24% are saying to empower students. To fuel reflective thinking, 35%, that is the highest one. Okay. And the 13% people are saying to expand wisdom.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Maybe you can close the poll now. Thank you for your support. There is one small disadvantage of this webinar jam. I can't see anything on the screen except my own PowerPoint slideshow. Anyway, that's okay because there is somebody to help me. That's wonderful. It's going well. So I am very happy that a large majority of you, almost 1/4 of you, have chosen to fuel reflective thinking. I think that's a wonderful way. I think it's the highest advantage, the greatest advantage that you have. I would like to tell you that every one of you is right. That's your opinion. So maybe whatever purpose you have chosen from the 5 available, and maybe another 15 that are not shown there, out of all those advantages of asking questions in the class, so you have chosen one. Now, maybe you can achieve absolute perfection in that area. For instance, if you consider that fueling reflective thinking is the greatest advantage of asking questions in the class, maybe you start analyzing whether your questions are aimed at achieving this. Are you promoting reflective thinking in your class through asking questions, by asking questions? So I think this helps you maybe look at yourself and identify whether, discover whether the questions that you are framing, the questions that you are asking in the class are serving that purpose, right? So this is one way of looking at ourselves from this point of view. Maybe I don't need to ask you this question, but all of you will agree with me that the teacher's job is not filling the student's brain like as if it were a vessel. So I go to the class, I pour out all that I know, and the student's brain is filled with information, data, knowledge, and this is what many traditional classes did. At least I was taught like that. My teachers never allowed me to ask a question, and they also did not ask me many questions except during the examinations. Maybe those days have changed now, and a lot of transformation has happened in the methodology, in the materials that we use, in everything that happens in a classroom today. The classrooms today are completely different from what they used to be. We are very happy about them because I mean, lots of research has happened, lots of discoveries have been made how students learn, and based on that, methodologies have been constantly evolving, and we are using the best available today in our classrooms. So no longer do we believe in filling the students' brains as if they were vessels. So it's not learning something and then going to the class, vomiting it out, and then they learn it and they vomit it out in the class, not like that. So a good teacher is one who ignites. So somebody said reflective thinking, to promote, to fuel, to ignite reflective thinking. So in case we are doing that, excellent. So and if questions are helping us ignite the students' minds so that students are empowered, students ask intelligent questions, students ask sensible questions, students become active, students get involved in the class, and the class becomes student-centered. If that's happening, that's really wonderful. And questions are the tools that can help us achieve this. Okay, let's move on from here. Right. Quickly going on to the grammatical structures that teachers use, that we use to ask questions. There are many different possibilities of asking questions, starting sentences with helping verbs. Usually, yes/no questions are framed that way. Starting questions with WH words, why, or, etc. And then, the which questions and what questions, when you have limited choices, typically we start a question with which of these two things you want. Which would you like to have? I have this and that, right? So I have two different kinds of things available here, and which one would you prefer? Whereas if you have lots of options available. Typically, we use the what kind of questions. Then there are question tags. There is inversion. I think your students must be taught about this, because there are many Indian students and even sometimes teachers make a mistake about the inversion. I mean, that happens in English language. So what happens to the verb? How does the noun and verb interchange their positions when questions are framed? So this is one common error. And that's why the teachers must be very careful about that. And they must take extra care to ensure that the students are taught this technique. Sometimes just the intonation helps. So a question can be found by just using the right intonation. But of course, I'm not talking about the kind of the Indian variation. So for instance, in South India, where I live, people ask questions like, instead of saying, where are you going? For instance, are you eating? Suppose that's a question. They don't make it a question. Oh, you are eating, huh? So they ask a question like that. So by just changing that intonation, they make it sound like a question. So students must be again cautioned about that. And they said, so English intonation does not work like that, or maybe English grammar does not work like that. And we have to tell them how to ask good questions. And a few other things, how to ask a question in the negative, they are structured. So teachers must spend quite some time on teaching students how to ask questions. Many students perhaps do not ask questions in the class for two reasons. One, they do not know how to ask questions. They don't have the right language, or maybe they have not been taught, so they don't ask questions. The second thing, they do not have the confidence, courage, and they are not empowered in the classroom to ask questions. There are some teachers who don't allow students to ask questions. They discourage questions. They shut students up, they snub them in case they ask questions. So that's the second reason. So whatever be the reason, if students are not asking questions in the class, I think that's a terrible class. So we should not, allow that to happen. Good teachers must always ask lots of questions and also invite, encourage, motivate, and ensure that students are actively engaged in the class by asking questions. So these are all various formats that you need to teach your students. Maybe teachers can spend a day, a class right at the beginning of the year on equipping students with the classroom language for questions, because sometimes students do not even know how to ask for something, how to seek a clarification, how to ask for permission, and how to raise their hand and then pose a question. They do not have the right. They have a question, but they don't know how to ask it. So it's the teacher's job right at the beginning, especially the English teacher's job, because other teachers, what is happening in the classes of other teachers, other subjects also has an impact. If I teach my students as an English teacher how to ask questions, how to frame good questions, this helps the student ask questions in other classes also. And also indirectly, it builds my image too, because sometimes if my students in other classes ask bad questions, maybe the teacher thinks, oh, this English teacher perhaps is not doing much, and then she does not know how to teach this, and then she has not taught her students well. So all these possibilities are there. So for all these purposes, we must equip our students with the skill of asking questions, the grammar that's necessary for asking questions, and also we must empower them. We must give them the courage and confidence to ask a question whenever they have a question. So they must be ready to, and they must be allowed to ask questions in the class. Sometimes what happens is asking questions may not be very difficult if it's just any question like that. But suppose the teacher has some specific thing in her mind which she wants to elicit from the students as an answer. This needs a little effort. So all kinds of questions that can be framed do not get the same answer. If we are not careful with the wording, if we are not careful with the question that we ask, the sentence that we frame, maybe the answer goes wrong, or the answer can be wrong, not because the student does not know the answer, but because I have not asked the question right. So there's some problem with my question, and that's why I'm getting the wrong answer. So one exercise that teachers can do, maybe I think this needs a lot of effort and prior preparation. Maybe you can write down at home before you go to the class, and before while you are preparing for the class. So how are you going to frame that question? And similarly, this skill can be taught to your students also, so that they know how to ask questions, the kind of questions that get them the right response. So here are some answers possible. Suppose I am here in your class now. My name is Raju. And if I have to give you the answer, my name is Raju, maybe usually, typically what question you ask me, what's your name? May I know your name, please? Something like that. So if you ask me, may I know your name, please? I say, oh, my name is Raju. Let's just do a very quick exercise. Let me choose answer 4. Answer 4 is R-A-J-U. That's my answer. Now, I want you to ask a question which gets you that answer. I must give you just R-A-J-U as the answer and nothing else. Your question must be such that no other answer is possible. Will you please try? Will you please write in the chat box what question would you ask me to get the answer R-A-J-U?
Can you spell your name, please?
Oh, very good. That's a very, very good question.
Spell your name.
Mm-hmm.
Spell your name. Can you spell your name? Many people are writing these two questions only.
Okay.
Can you spell your name?
Okay.
May I know the spelling of your name?
Okay.
What is the spelling of your name? How to spell your name?
Mm-hmm.
How do you spell your name? Yeah.
Good. I think that's all good. Perhaps maybe we can further refine the questions that we ask. For instance, if somebody does not expect me to answer that in English, maybe I can spell my name in some other language also. In case you want very accurate answers, maybe our questions also must be accurate. For instance, can you spell your name in English, please? Or what is the English spelling of your name? I mean, what you said is perfectly right. The questions that you're given are perfectly right. But sometimes this is a very easy example. But sometimes what happens when you want a little more complex answers from your students, so you have to be very thoughtful. You have to be very, very clear in your own mind. If somebody asks me, sir, what are the letters in your spelling? Maybe, right, I can give in some other order. I need not give them in the same order because the question does not demand it, right? Or suppose somebody asks me, sir, what's the first letter of your name? And then suppose somebody asks me, what's the second letter of your name? So you can go, but maybe you don't even know how many letters are there in my name. And then is it a double A or a single A? Is it a double O or U? There can be any number of possibilities. What I told you again is, I gave you a very simple example to just tell you that asking questions becomes difficult if we want a certain specific answer from our students. So tomorrow I am going to my class and then I am going to teach this lesson. While I am going to teach this lesson, I am going to ask a question here, a question here. This is my lesson plan. So does this question get exactly the answer that I want? So this is something that must pass through our planning and that must be taken care of before we go to the class so that we ask the right questions and get the right answers. Okay, there are lots of different kinds of questions, many, many different types of them. So, I mean, the whole list is there. I'm not going to discuss all of them with us today because I think in the limited time that we have, maybe we'll discuss some of them and I'll tell you how they can be used in classes, whatever subjects we teach. So there are yes/no questions, information questions, close-ended questions, open-ended questions, teacher-initiated, teacher asks the questions, and student-initiated. Students ask on their own. Students seek clarifications, students have doubts, students raise their hand and ask questions, etc. There are factual, literal, inferential, evaluative questions. We'll see an example of each. Objective and impersonal, subjective and experiential, clarification questions and provocative questions, rhetorical questions and leading questions, direct and indirect questions, and a lot of other kinds and types of questions. So there are many, many types of them. I put them in two columns. Perhaps you have already understood why there are two different columns. Perhaps the easiest way of looking at the table is that maybe the ones on the left side are slightly easier to answer rather than the ones on the right side. But I mean, I'm not making a general statement about that. I'll come to some of them to establish how they are structured. So just take a look at one simple example. So which is a which yes-no questions and information questions, for instance. So what are yes-no questions? Any question that can be answered with that one single word yes or no is a yes-no question. Is this webinar hosted by LTI? Suppose I ask that question. So generally what do you say? Yes. This webinar is hosted by LTI. If you do not know who is hosting that, maybe, or if you if LTI is not hosting it, perhaps you would say no. The second question cannot be answered with that single word yes or no. Who is hosting this webinar? So if that's the question, you cannot say yes. You have to say something. Oh, this webinar is hosted by LTI. You have to give some information, right? Now, suppose you have these two kinds of options in your class. You go to a class and then you can ask some yes-no questions, and you can also ask some information questions. Which do you think are better? Why? I'm sure you all agree with me that information questions are better than yes-no questions. Why? Because the student does not have to give a one-word answer, which is a 50% possibility of being correct, but the student has to know something beforehand and then give some information as the answer. So in case I've been asking yes-no questions in my class, too many of them, I mean, there are occasions when only yes-no questions serve the purpose. I'm not, ignoring that fact. So, in situations where both kinds of questions are possible, if I gradually make a conscious effort, so during my class, I make a conscious effort to ask more information questions than yes-no questions, I think I am progressing as a teacher. And my classroom is becoming more interactive. My students are getting more involved. So who tells me what kind of questions I am asking in my class? I tell myself, I know maybe I have to make some kind of an evaluation. What kind of questions I'm asking? Some people ask even the kind of yes-no questions that are just useless. For instance, if you ask a question like, are you with me? Are you following? Right? Am I clear? Suppose, what purpose does this? This is a yes-no question, but even that yes-no question also does not get a response. Nobody says no. Are you with me? Have I made it clear? So who says no? Usually students just keep quiet. So such questions are completely useless. Even if you want to check their knowledge, check their comprehension, and if you ask a question like, how many things are there, something like that, I think maybe this is a little better than that, but just asking a yes-no question may not serve much of a purpose. So the first point that I would like to make today is, so ask yourself whether you are making more information questions or more yes-no questions. You have to evaluate. Maybe you have to take an audio recorder to the class. Maybe one day, 45 minutes of your class, you record yourself, take it home, and then analyze all the questions that you ask in the class and find out how many yes-no questions have been asked and have been answered, or you did not wait for the answer at all. You just asked the question and moved on, and how many information questions you asked, what kinds of responses you got, etc., etc. So the moment you begin making some kind of an analysis like that, I think progress as a teacher, as a teacher who is capable of asking the right kind of questions begins. So please do this. So in case you're asking the first kind of questions, gradually switch over to the second kind of questions. And yes-no questions also can be complex. Yes-no questions also may be sometimes difficult to answer. I'm not talking about the easiness of answering the question alone. Sometimes, for instance, when some people ask us a question, they tell us, oh, I don't want to listen to anything now, so just tell me yes or no. It's not easy, right? Maybe there are kinds of questions where even saying yes or no may be difficult. I'm not talking about that kind of situations. In a classroom situation where a question with a straight answer, a question that begins with an auxiliary verb, right? A helping verb, a have verb, or a be verb, or a modal verb, and then expects an answer either with one of these two words. So better ask questions that begin with the WH words: what, where, when, why, how, whom, etc. Okay, let's take a look at the second possibility. So you can ask lots of close-ended questions or maybe a lot of open-ended questions in the class. So what are close-ended and open questions? To make it very simple for you, close-ended questions have only one correct answer. They have an answer. The answer, one possibility, many possibilities are there, but one answer is correct, other answers are wrong. For instance, look at the first question there. How many people are participating in this webinar? So you can look at the screen. Maybe there is some number there, 600, 6,000, whatever. I don't know, whatever number that is. So you give that number. Only that number is correct. Suppose there are 1,000 people watching this program right now. If somebody says 1,000 as the answer to this question, he's right. He gets 100 marks. But suppose somebody says 1001, 950, 1000.02, whatever, all the other answers are wrong. So a close-ended question has one correct answer and all other possible answers are wrong. Right. Whereas an open-ended question can have multiple correct answers. Right? There can be 1,000 answers, all 1,000 answers can be correct. So the possibility of many correct answers makes it an open-ended. Wrong answers also can be there, but right answers are many. There may be an answer that is completely unacceptable, but there may be hundreds and thousands of possibilities of the correct answer. For instance, look at the second question there. Why are you participating in this webinar? One of the questions that I asked you at the beginning, maybe some very similar question. Okay, so what do you expect from this webinar I asked you? So what were the answers? So there were many, many, many answers. People gave all kinds. Somebody said something else. So all answers are correct because that's your perception, that's your need, that's your expectation. That is the outcome expecting which you have come here to participate in this class. So many different possibilities are there. All those answers are correct from your point of view. I must accept it because that's your answer. There cannot be any argument on that. So open-ended questions have multiple correct answers. Close-ended questions have single correct answer. But again, don't mistake that close-ended questions are easy to answer. No, I did not say that. Close-ended questions also can be made very complex, very difficult to answer. For instance, just let's look at the first question. How many people are participating in this webinar is very easy to answer because the number is visible there. Suppose I change the question a little and ask you, how many teachers are participating in this webinar? It's not easy to answer. Though it's a close-ended question, it cannot easily be answered because the number that is shown on the screen there in front of you may not be all teachers. There may be other people also. Right? So you must have some data, some technique of identifying who are teachers, who are not. Suppose I give you a task like this. Okay, go to the backend and then identify, take a look at the profiles of all the participants today and give me the number of participants in the webinar who are English teachers at high school level. Suppose I give you a task like that. This is a close-ended question. But what do you have to do? So you have to go to that backend, you have to download that Excel sheet, and you have to look at their profiles, you have to sort that, you have to identify only those teachers who are working in schools, and you have to identify those who are working at high school level and those who are teaching English. And maybe if the situation and the task demands, you have to check whether that information is right or wrong, and a lot of other things can be included in that. So a close-ended question also can be leveled at different levels depending upon your need, depending upon the kind of students that you have, and depending on the kind of task that you have chosen to have done in your class. Similarly, open-ended questions can be easy or difficult. Typically, of course, the open-ended questions are slightly more difficult than the close-ended questions. Then, I think maybe I wish I had some more time to discuss this with you. Suppose there are two situations possible. There is a situation where the teacher asks lots of interesting questions and makes the class very lively and interactive, and there are quite a lot of questions that happen in the class. The teacher ignites the minds of her students and then generates a lot of reflective thinking, analytical thinking, creative thinking, and then, lots of things happen in the class. That's an excellent, a bright way. But something better than that, something even more interesting than that is enabling and empowering your students to ask questions in the class. You may be asking very interesting questions and very thought-provoking questions, that's okay. But I think your success depends on empowering your students to ask. As long as your students are silent spectators in the class, as long as they are passive, as long as they just listen to you and only answer the questions, all the questions that you ask, they answer. I think nothing much is happening still. It's only transfer of knowledge still. Or maybe a little reflective thinking and here and there. But only when a class has enormous opportunity for students to ask questions, right? And provoke the teacher's thought. In fact, a good class is such, a good class is one where the questions asked by the student should be such that the teacher must go back and then do some research to find the answers and get back to the class and clarify them. So in case you have students like that, I think encourage them. So let a student ask you such a good question that you need to prepare well, you need to research, and you need to constantly improve. In case that situation is not there, it is the teacher's responsibility to create that situation. I told you in the beginning that students don't ask questions for two reasons. One, they don't have the right language or they don't have confidence. So it's our job to create both of them, right? So to instill our students with confidence and also to give them the right language that's necessary. Okay, there is another category, factual questions and evaluative questions. Factual questions check for facts. So some fact that's already stated in the text, right? It's already there. All that you need is maybe scan, maybe search, and then locate that information and find that information and bring how many types of questions are there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 17. So there are 17 kinds of questions. So what are you testing there? Only factual knowledge of the students. This again does not serve much purpose. Perhaps if it happens in a mathematics class, it's okay, but not in an English class. In English class, we are not helping our students count numbers or locate facts. Again, let me clarify here that if your objective is to teach them scanning, skimming, perhaps factual questions are okay because they need to very quickly locate the information. You are teaching them speed reading techniques. Okay, so maybe in such cases, factual questions do a wonderful job. I think they are very useful. But in case you encourage your students to ask evaluative questions, or you ask evaluative questions which demand some thought, some analysis, some comparison, contrast, and lots of other things, I think your class will be better and you improve yourselves as a teacher. So look at these two questions. How many types of questions are there? Why are inferential questions better than factual questions? Suppose I ask you this question, the one who is all the teachers who are participating in it. So suppose I ask you the second question. Why are inferential questions better than factual questions? So you need to evaluate. There are two kinds of questions that are there in front of you, and then you evaluate them, which is better, which is not so good, and which serves what purpose, etc., etc. So you need some analytical skills, right, to evaluate both of them, compare them, and also come with the answer. Whereas the first one does not demand any analytical skills. One more category, there are objective and subjective. Objective not in the context of objective type questions, multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks and all that, not that. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about subjective questions where one has to answer from one's own perspective. right? It is my viewpoint. It's my experience, right? I draw from my own reflection. I draw from my own experience, and then I give an answer. If a question demands that kind of an answer, that it's subjective. But if the answer is general in nature, some kind of universalized, something that applies to everybody, it's not my personal experience, that's an objective question. Look at the two examples that are there. Which types of questions are easier to answer? I'm not asking you for your opinion, right? I'm asking you maybe some kind of an evaluative study, and then maybe the answer is already there, or perhaps some points have already been made in the class. I taught them something yesterday based on that. I'm asking generally, which type of questions are easier to answer? There are two kinds of questions. So between the two, which is easier? So I'm not asking you to give your subjective evaluation of that, but a general statement. Generally, yes, no questions are very easy to answer. Suppose somebody gives that answer. That's all. That's objective. But if I want to ask a subjective question, for instance, which is your favorite type of questions? So I have not taught that to you. In case I have given an answer to that question, that's my perception. I said perhaps maybe evaluative questions are the best as far as my perception is concerned. I think they are the best. I think. That's my judgment. That's my view. So now you look at it from your point of view. Which questions do you think are the best for you or for your students? So subjectivity enters there. So in your classroom, when you ask more and more subjective questions, naturally students have to think on their own. Students have to respond from their either past experience or from their analytical abilities, applying their mind to it. And they have to give different kinds of answers. Everybody may have a different choice. So let your class have a lot of scope for subjective answers. I'm talking about English teachers. English teachers, when they're asking questions, they are not just looking for answers. They are also looking for the student's ability to build sentences, students' ability to use English, the students' ability to create an environment for themselves where they learn English together. Right? So it's not just the answer. Sometimes even a wrong answer is also okay with me. If the student gives me a wrong answer, it's perfectly okay with me if the sentence is correct. I used to have lots of arguments on that with my friends. So an English teacher should not look at the correctness of the content. It should look more at the correctness of the language, because I am there to teach them language. That was my argument. Anyway, so again, that's another area. So make your questions subjective. Okay? Let students respond by using language creatively, productively. Language communication always happens in the right environment. The English teacher's job, perhaps of all the responsibilities that an English teacher has, the most important is creating the right environment in the class. English language can be easily taught or easily learned by the students themselves, even without the teacher's intervention. The teacher at some stage can gradually disappear, and learning can happen, provided we know how to create the right environment in our classes. If you have the right environment and students have opportunity to use language in real life like situations, I mean, nothing can stop them from learning. That's one thing that has been missing for a very long time. Our methodology perhaps did not have scope for that communicatively, right? Creating the right environments, giving opportunities for students to use, use. That's, I think, one word that must always be, remembered by every English teacher. Use. An ability, an opportunity, an environment where students use language, not just listen. If they productively use it, they're learning it, right? So learning can be facilitated like that. Okay, there are some clarification questions, provocative questions, etc. Right. Maybe of all the questions that I asked you, maybe don't worry too much about the kinds of questions. Whatever questions you ask, there can be lot questions, there can be hot questions. Lot questions means lower order thinking. Any question can be easy to answer. That's maybe does not need much thought, much analysis, much creative, reflective abilities. They can be answered easier. And hard questions are those questions that need higher thinking abilities to answer them. I think many of you know, perhaps those who did B.Ed and other training courses perhaps are very familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. So there is a hierarchy, and depending upon what level do you want to pitch your questions at. I mean, whether you want to ask knowledge testing questions, and towards the higher level evaluation questions where students have to apply their minds to things and then show their assimilation, knowledge, comprehension, etc., etc. So you can choose the right kinds of questions. So will somebody, I think, have some 5 minutes left. Will somebody help me launch this quiz? This is a quiz, this is not a poll. Poll is, I asked you for your opinion. I'm asking you.
It's live, sir.
Okay, good. So let me explain the question to you. The question is a little difficult to answer. Don't jump and don't quickly answer. Please wait for half a minute and let me explain the question to you. The question is, if you were presenting this webinar instead of I am doing it. I am doing it now. Suppose you are doing this webinar. What else would you have added? That is a question. You don't have to answer that question. Please don't answer that question. What you need to do is that question, you have to tell me whether it is a yes-no factual open-ended question, or an information factual close-ended question, or an experiential open-ended information question, or an information close-ended experimental question. Slightly difficult. Think before you answer. Only one answer is correct. Unlike the poll. I told you while launching the poll that all answers are correct. But here it's a quiz. It's not a poll. The format is poll, but the concept is quiz. Yeah, you can poll now. Your answers will give me an idea of how well you have understood the types of questions. Yeah, if a few hundreds of them have polled, perhaps we can close that. We are short of time. Shall we close the poll?
The poll is closed, and 11% people are saying it's yes, no, factual, open-ended.
How many people have polled C as the answer?
11% people.
C.
11%. C.
Answer C.
11% are saying yes, yes or no.
No, that's answer A.
Yeah.
Experiential. Answer C is correct.
Sir, we haven't mentioned A and B. Okay, experiential. It's 61%.
16.
61.
61. Great. That's wonderful. I'm so very happy. So that's the correct answer. So this question is experiential because I am asking you to look at it from your point of view and give your experience, your ideas, and your views on that. It's open-ended because multiple correct answers are possible. And it's an information question. Right? It's not a yes/no question because information is required. So 61% have got it right. I'm so very happy. Congratulations, every one of you. let's move on from here. Then I'll leave this. So this is my last slide. What question is most essential? Perhaps this is one point that I told you I would make right at the beginning of my presentation today. So when you are asking questions in the class, it's not only what we are expecting to get from our students, the answers that we are going to get from our students, that is important. There is something much bigger, something more that's important. What's that? So every question that I ask, every answer that I get, and everything that's happening in the class is a constant feedback on my own presentation. So for instance, the previous question that I asked you, if 61% people answered this question, maybe 40% did not get the right answer, there is something wrong with my presentation. Maybe I went too very fast, I made the question very complex, I did not give you enough time, right? I did not give the right inputs. So there was some problem. None of you went wrong. That 40% did not fail because they are bad. So usually what do? I brand my students. 40% students failed in my exam, but I failed. It's the teacher who failed because 40% students failed. What happened? Maybe one of the reasons could be I did not give you enough time at all to answer the question. I did not know how much time an average student needs to answer that. Or maybe I did not explain the questions properly. Or maybe the question was too very beyond the level of my student, some such thing. So the answer that 40% going wrong is some kind of a feedback to me. It's kind of a wash back to me. And from that, I have to learn if I administer this question again in my next class, in a similar class some other time, perhaps I have to either rephrase my question or I have to allow more time. Whatever has gone wrong, I have to correct that. So now the last message that I would like to give you today is, of course, I told you that you can audio record your class and then analyze it for yourself. But what you must remember is always ask yourself lots of self-evaluation questions. So what is it that makes you a better teacher? How are your questions? How better your questions can be? What is the feedback that you get on each of the questions? Are the questions pitched at the right level? How do you improve as a questioning teacher, as that igniting teacher? So there is a form, Google form at the bottom. Maybe I'll post that link in the chat box immediately after this slide is over. And maybe by tomorrow evening, all of you answer. You need not give your mobile number. You need not give your name. You need not give your email address. There are just 10 questions that help you just rate yourself. They are just multiple choice for 10 questions. It only, nobody even sees the answers that you give. You are the only one who can see that, and you don't have to share any information about you. So I'll share that link with you. Please do it anytime before tomorrow evening. Thank you very much. Let's all call it a day. And I think it has been a wonderful evening. Maybe you can give your feedback later. And in case there are any questions and if there is time available, I'll very happily take that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes, sir. So thank you so much for a wonderful presentation on questioning skills for the classrooms. I'm sure all the attendees would have really enjoyed and would have had a lot of takeaways. One of the takeaways that I had was it's very important for all the teachers to enable and empower the students to ask as many questions as possible. Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful presentation and enlightening us on different types of questions. As we are running short of time, I'm sure there are a lot of questions. We might send you the different questions separately so that you could have a look at all the questions and then answer them whenever you have a time. Thank you once again. And now may I invite Dr. Sharmila to propose a word of thanks.
It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks. I must mention my deep sense of gratitude to the speaker for his enlightening presentation. Sir, you have pinpointed the role of the teacher in an excellent way, and you have made the participants to be active throughout your presentation. I'm sure that there will happen notable change in their style of questioning in the classroom, since you have given examples of all types of questioning. Thank you very much, sir, since you have ignited us to examine our questioning skill. I thank everyone who helped us to organize this webinar in a successful way. I thank LTI office bearers who help and motivate us to be active and do something innovatively every now and then. I thank the technical team for their excellent support throughout this webinar. I thank all the participants who have received something useful for their classroom teaching. Dear participants, those who have attended the entire session will get the participation certificate within a week's time. LTI webinar series session 28 will be held on 8th November between 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. The topic is Virtual Blended Learning, Making It Real. Please register and participate. Once again, I thank every one of you. Thank you, one and all.